Hey people, what's happening? Recently I've been backing up my entire PS3 collection to my console's hard drive, and I want to share my experience with you for this one and what I did, what I used, and what you should maybe think about if you plan on doing the exact same thing. Today we are drinking a pu'er. Basically, I only have 2 teas at the moment, so we are drinking the same stuff each video. So cheers to you. And let's get started using the PlayStation 3. Hell yeah! Here's the controller. So what I did, or what I have, is a PlayStation 3 Super Slim, which is my favorite model, because it does not have a motorized disc tray. Like this thing slides open, you put the disc in. Less parts to break, easier to take apart. Like this is my favorite model, even though it's not as beautiful as the other ones. And what I also did, this came stock with a 500 gigabyte hard drive, and I replaced that with a 1 terabyte SSD. Why did I do that? Like, you're not getting any speed increases from that. Like, the console is not capable of using the higher speed of the SSD, but you get better reliability. Like, I want to reduce the moving parts in my devices as much as possible. And hard drives, right, always spinning, always a risk of breaking if you shake the console. And if you're like me, like you're moving around your consoles quite a bit because the space under your TV is quite limited, there's always a chance of the hard drive having some sort of malfunction and breaking. And when you have an SSD, less moving parts, less chances of stuff breaking. The negative thing is, like SSDs, right, the more you rewrite them, the slower they get, and that's a problem. However, not with things like consoles, because you install the games and then they stay there. You don't rewrite it constantly like a computer hard drive where you have files, you delete them, you put new ones on. With a console, it just stays the same the entire time, and if you have enough storage, you're probably not going to need more in the future. Now, the PlayStation 3 is capable of having like an internal hard drive of something weird, like 1.7 terabytes. Like not quite 2 terabytes, that's too much, but like 1.7. And I just made it easier myself. I put in a 1 terabyte drive because they're cheaper, and PlayStation 3 games are not too big. They're mostly in the like 10 to 50 gigabyte radius. So because they come on Blu-ray, like 50 gigabytes is basically the maximum they can hold. I think the biggest one I have is Final Fantasy 13, which is I think 41 gigabytes big. So that one was the biggest game out of all of them, and I think most of them are video files. Now, where did I put the controller? Here it is. All right. Wanting to rip the games, I am using a application called Multiman, which is like a multimedia thing, but you can rip your games to the internal hard drive. Now, it's not as easy as simply loading the games. What you're going to do is, like, you choose a game, and the console will think, so it's like emulating putting the disc in. So the console will think that there's a disc in the drive, and then from the standard menu, like right now, it thinks Lightning Returns Final Fantasy 13 is in the disk drive, and it will load that one. So, and you need to start the Multiman application and basically preload the disk so the console thinks it's in there. So it's an extra step. Every now and then the game crashes or the application crashes. But like once you're in the game, once the game is booted, I have not had any bad experience so far. Now, when you're ripping games, you need to be careful with your games and what you're doing. So, for example, one game that gave me trouble is Hyperdimension Neptunia. Because this is a game I do not have a normal copy of. Actually, where did I put my... Oh, here it is. So, this is Neptunia. This is not just Hyperdimension Neptunia. This is actually the Neptunia collection, which has Neptunia 1, 2, and 3 on there. Now, problem with games like this is they are like a multi-boot or multi-disc game. So when you're on the menu, you actually can choose, well, now that I loaded Final Fantasy 13, not so much anymore, but like on the menu, it would show 3 different discs. Oh yeah, here we have it, right? Neptunia, Neptunia 2, and Neptunia 3. There are 3 separate games, and Multiman does not recognize them as such. So if you have the game in, it will only recognize the first one. There are a few other games like this. For example, here we have Tales of Fantasia and Tales of Graces F. There's a collection version of this that has both games on one disc. Only Tales of, not Fantasia, Symphonia will be able to be recognized and be able to get ripped to the hard drive. So that's quite of a negative, at least using Multiman. I've not tried any other programs, any other apps that rip games, so maybe there's a game that can recognize multi-disc games. But if you have multiple of these collections, you cannot easily rip them to the hard drive like any other game. So none of the other games gave me any trouble. I know there are some games that have, I think, on-disc DLC, and I don't think they work either. So what you need to do if you want to rip all of them, you need the single disc release of them. So don't get the collections. If you're just building a PlayStation collection, get these single game releases. If you want to do it all legit and copy your games from the disc directly without downloading any illegal copies. So that's what I've done. I took all of my games. The next problem was, especially when you're buying pre-owned, pre-used, some of them may be damaged. And that's basically, it's nice to have them all on the hard drive. My main reason for wanting to rip my games is trying to figure out if they're actually functional, if they work properly. Because if the game is able to be ripped to the hard drive, the entire disk is functional. It's not like while playing the game will crash because it can't read anything. And in my collection, actually, I have 2 games I was not able to rip to the hard drive. And these were Final Fantasy 13 and White Knight Chronicles 2. Both of them have a scratch on them. And this is not something like White Knight Chronicles 2, when I bought it last year, I played it for a solid 15 hours or so and never had any problems. So I would have been none the wiser. I would have thought this was a functional copy of the game, but it's not. While copying, I got error messages always at the same point. So there's a scratch on the disc that prevents the game from being read. Now, unlike DVDs or CDs, you cannot resurface Blu-ray drives because they have a actually scratch-resistant surface on it, so they cannot be resurfaced. So when there's a deep scratch that makes them unable to read, the disc is a coaster. So these 2 games I need to buy a new disc for and hopefully have a working copy in my collection. I mean, Final Fantasy 13 is dirt cheap, but White Knight Chronicles 2, even though not too expensive, like 20 to 30 euros, it's not the cheapest game, and you don't want to rebuy that multiple times. Actually, Final Fantasy 13, it's like my 3rd copy of it. I have 2 for the Xbox 360 as well. So I have enough methods to play this. And of course, there are like piracy apps. There are like fake online stores on here that have all of the games for free. So most people would simply see, oh, my disc is not working. Let me download the game off of that store. So I'm not someone like that. I want all the discs to function. That is one of my reasons for ripping all of these, to see that they all work and that I have a functional collection. And of course, now when I have a game I want to play, actually, what do we want to play? Let's do something that may not need an update when I start it. So let's do Drakengard 3 right here, which is a great game. I had a lot of fun playing it, even though it went away from the more open stages of the first Drakengard, and I think even the second. I've never played that one, and went in a more linear path. And actually, while playing it, I always thought, man, they need someone to do the combat probably. Like, maybe they should get someone like Platinum Games to do it. And what did they do with Nier Automata? They got Platinum Games to do it. It's verifying the data. just checking that it's all there, and now it should boot into the either menu or game directly. Sometimes it does one of the two and I'm never quite sure. So, all right. So you see, it still has Neptunia. It's confused with the multiple game disks. And here we have Drakengard. And if I now start it, it should boot into the game. The console's a lot quieter without the SSD. Oh, all right. Latest update. So let's update that one. So of course you can still update the games. The game, like the console, just thinks there's a game disc in it. So according to the console, everything is legit, which it is in my case. So it's now downloading an update. Well, 5 minutes. Doesn't look like we can play anything in this video. But if you want to whip your own collection, check out, verify that all the games work. Make sure that you're buying the single discs releases, and always check the disc if you're in a store buying a used PS3 game. Check the disc for any scratches you may have. Also, if you're upgrading your console like me to a bigger SSD, of course you need to load a custom firmware on this, which is even on the latest firmware update. Super easy, it takes like 5 minutes. You need the like custom firmware, put that on a USB stick, open it in a certain website on the PlayStation 3 browser. You need an internet connection for it, and it really takes like 5 minutes. Then you install Multiman and you're ready to go. And that's what I did. So my next step is actually, I took the 500 gigabyte drive out. So now I have like an extra 500 gigabyte hard drive. But this is actually a 2 terabyte hard drive, which I will put into my PlayStation 4. Sadly, I checked, like my second old PlayStation 4 has an update on it where I cannot load a custom firmware, which is sad. I would have liked a modded PlayStation 4, but I'm sure they will do one in the near future, or at one point. I will not update my old model right there, but I will install this one into my PlayStation 4 Slim. So I have a 2 terabyte drive to install all my games. And what I also ordered, because I've heard the Vita scene has made some huge progress, I ordered one of these SD to Vita as converters, like that you can use normal SD cards on this one. And I will install that and maybe finally be able to play PSP games on my TV using the Vita TV. That has always been my goal. I was never a big fan of the Vita library too much. PSP games were always my goal for this, but sadly, until now it never worked for me. I never got it to work on like the old custom firmwares and the versions of the Vita here, my Vita TV I had. So that's my goal for the next future. So if you want to see a video on that, let me know, and I will see you next time. Bye. Let me turn this around. Bye.